Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is a very special day because I'm in New Orleans at the Trimble Insight Tech Conference. And even more importantly, I'm speaking to my friend, Zach Schuchart. How's it going, Zach?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. So today's topic is Fleet Profitability Unleashed, the Optimal Dynamics Partnership Advantage with Zach Schuchart. Zach, please introduce yourself and your company and what you guys do.
Yeah, I'm Zach Schuchart with Optimal Dynamics. I am the Senior Vice President and Head of Sales for OD, based out of New York City.
Very nice. So what problem do you guys solve, and who do you solve it for?
Yeah, the problem that we solve is the load planning and driver to load assignment problem. And we solve that for fleet operators, large and small, both shippers and carriers.
So one more time, the problem you're solving is what? The load planning?
We solve is essentially decision automation and the planning and dispatching operations.
Yeah, and we talked the other day about this before we got to the conference. Most companies aren't using softwares like yours. So how are they getting it done?
Yeah, traditionally in this space, software tends to not be on the leading edge of investment. Transportation is a very old industry, and this decision is a very complicated and hairy decision to solve. And our customers make hundreds or thousands of these decisions a day.
Yeah. So I think the first time you said to me load planning, I thought, oh, Trimble has a routing software for that. They'll tell you turn by turn how to get there. And you said, no, that's how you manage one truck that day.
Yeah, and not to discount the routing problem.
Super important.
Yeah, it is still a problem, but really it is not as complex as a load planning problem because it is a route is a defined kind of scope, and a load planning problem has a very uncertain future.
So you were saying if I have a big fleet, they obviously all need routing software from Trimble. Thank you very much. But you also need something at the network level.
Yes.
That helps me say, Zach, you take that lane. Joe, you take this lane.
Yes.
And 198 other trucks that have to be assigned.
Exactly. The thesis here is if you're trying to optimize drivers on loads that should have never been in the network in the first place, optimization and even route optimization only gets you so far.
Right. The weird thing about our business is I can kind of optimize around my schedule and my people, and that's what I need to do. And if I'm ever pushed late because somebody didn't unload me, it's almost like they unloaded that externality to the wind, right? It's not they're paying a little extra, but the company takes a beating on it.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect, and the shipper looks at it in a very myopic view because they have their own problems to solve. They're trying to sell their product, where transportation is a small piece of what they look at. But to our customers, mainly the carriers, that's their livelihood. That's everything that they do.
Yep.
So they're already negotiating from different perspectives on, if a shipper delays a carrier, they're like, okay, well, we're going to true that up in an accessorial or a fee that we'll give you. But in reality, that delay has a ripple effect in the carrier network that's far more than just the fee that they collect.
Right. So how big do you need to be to get advantage from working with Optimal Dynamics?
Yeah, the floor is kind of dropping, but it's typically carriers or fleets that are north of 75 trucks that we typically work with. I mean, it's
private fleets too.
Yeah, private fleets as well. So we have several shippers as customers, and we're seeing more and more shippers actually look at their fleet very opportunistically instead of just looking at it from a service perspective. They're actually saying, well, how do I drive more cost avoidance or even profitability in my fleet?
I've done a lot of podcasts. I think this is the only second one I've done on this. Mm-hmm. This is a new layer of software, and it's above the shipment you're doing today. It's at the network level.
Yes.
And how does it fit into my transportation management system?
Sure. So there are two main components that we integrate into to drive the decision. One is the system of record of the transaction, which is the TMS. So that is why Trimble is such an important partner of ours and an amazing company, because they have a whole suite of TMSs that our customers use. And they provide the demand signal to our decision automation platform. So when I say demand signal, it is the economics of the load. So it is the origin to destination, the revenue on the load, the pickup and delivery windows, and all of the other economics that are involved in the load. And we ingest that via an integration from the TMS, and then we write back to the TMS when we're making a different decision that's currently in place.
So they don't necessarily have to go over to log into Optimal Dynamics because it's being pulled into their TMS?
It is a two-way integration. However, we do have a user interface that streamlines a decision for a planner. So while they still are in the TMS, our solution is meant to streamline their day and allow them to make many more decisions quickly, rather than making them sequentially in a TMS.
Yep. And I think, the name of the title today has right in here, Fleet Profitability. The reason you guys exist is because there is a profitability problem in this business. And we've had a lot of different technologies for a while now. We have a transportation system. There's all the technology. We're at the Trimble Insight Conference. There's technology for everything. But last year, a lot of trucking companies suffered. I mean, when I say last year, we're in 2025 towards the end. It's been a tough road here.
Yeah, it's been very tough for our customers. The market dynamics are not conducive for profitability. Our customers are constantly being squeezed from their customers on rate. There are a whole host of other peripheral challenges that they're seeing, especially with a lot of the regulatory impacts of the non-domiciled driver situation and all of the things that are creating a significant amount of headwind for our customers in a very depressed market. So anything that we can do to boost utility in their network and drive more profitability for them is something that's very refreshing to our customer base and something that we're very passionate about. And really, our sole mission is to drive utility and profitability on the truckload network.
Since we are here in New Orleans, and what a wonderful place to have a conference.
It is.
Talk about the importance of that Trimble relationship.
Yeah.
Because over there in the pavilion, there are a whole building filled with partners and customers, and sometimes even competitors. I think the nature of Trimble is we compete with you here, we partner with you here, but I think everybody has a view of the customer first. So if we have to cooperate in this area to better serve the customer, we're going to do so.
Yeah, so Trimble has been very welcoming to us, and we're very appreciative of that. Their innovation is very inspiring, and you're right, a customer-focused or customer-first approach to how we partner together really is the right thing to do, and you can see that in how we interact with one another and our customers.
Yep. It's interesting, now that my phone made some noise, I have to bring it up here. Somebody described last year when at this conference, they said you could look at Trimble as it's not the hardware like the phone. It's not necessarily an app, although they have an app, I'm sure. It's all those apps that are on the phone. In my phone, the Android operating system or the Apple operating system connects them and makes it easy for information to flow from system to system without being insecure. For the ELD or the telematics, we have Trimble for that. And super important, and I think that security has been talked about quite a bit this week. So is openness, so is AI powered. I know you got a lot of AI in your tool, but we'll get to that in a minute. But it's very interesting because it feels like the difference between, say my phone and the ELD telematics is they aren't supposed to be messing with it. They want all that information. I don't want my driver having to enter a whole bunch of information when he gets to a location. I want him to be able to say, there it is.
Should be intuitive, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, tell us a little bit about you, Zach. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the mothership OD.
Yeah.
That's Optimal Dynamics.
Yeah, so OD is headquartered in New York City, but I live in Atlanta. We have our team members are kind of all over the country. But I'm from Pennsylvania originally. Grew up in south central Pennsylvania, just in a little town right outside of Gettysburg. So Hanover, Pennsylvania, if you've ever heard of Hood's
Nice.
Potato Chips and Snyder's Pretzels,
Oh, yeah,
that's where
okay.
they're from.
Yep, Hanover.
Yep. Went to school at Alabama, so I graduated from Alabama. That's where I met my wife, and she's from Atlanta. That's how I got to Atlanta. So
nice.
like a lot of people that want to get into logistics in Atlanta, I started my career at UPS. So I was a programmer for them as to kind of start my career. After UPS, I went to work for a company called Chainalytics, which is a boutique supply chain consulting company in Atlanta, based in Atlanta. I actually lived in
those guys. They're from the MIT guys. Right?
Yes, Dr. Chris Kapos.
I've interviewed Chris.
Yep, he's a great guy. So I was very fortunate, and actually this kind of leads me to why and how I joined OD. But at Chainalytics, I lived both in North America and Europe. I worked in their transportation benchmarking consortium. Worked for XPO for a little while in operations. I kind of had a consulting complex of never being in operations, so I wanted to go work for a company that was a little bit closer to it.
Never a bad thing, because you can forevermore go, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
I was there.
Exactly. And then right before COVID, moved into the startup space. At that time, there was a tremendous amount of money flooding into the supply chain and innovations into the supply chain. And I had met Daniel Powell, our CEO, and was just fascinated by the company because I spent a number of years with Chainalytics selling a complex mathematical solution to shippers and 3PLs in their benchmarking solution. So that was an ordinary least squares regression model applying advanced math on trucking networks, which was a very difficult sell because you're going to an industry.
Because you're speaking gibberish.
Exactly. So you have to. It was a great learning experience for me. It was some of the most rewarding years of my career doing that. But I believe that really prepared me to take the next step into even more advanced math with optimal dynamics and actually deploying that math and helping sell that math to our customers, which are carriers and shippers.
Yeah. Well, at this conference and you talk to all these people, and I was just sitting on the bus where a very similar conversation was happening on the bus on the way over here. And the nature of trucking is it's an old business, but it's also a business that they're moving, and they need everything to be obviously efficient as possible, and they need to use all that network and the gibberish, as I was joking. But you guys cleaned it up, so it's nice and simple for the operators.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's simple. It's still very challenging, and it's something that we all realize that the majority of a transportation decision, especially in the planning and dispatching arena, and even the strategic side of it, the majority of it is math. It's very complex math. And historically, over the last 5-6 decades, we as humans have been very, very good at distilling down these very messy, complex problems that are very math driven, but using our human intuition and kind of gut feel and what we know about our customers and our drivers and saying, yes, this works. I can't tell you exactly what the marginal value of this driver is 3 days from now, but I know my customers and I know the demand signal that is coming, and I think that this is a good decision. So a lot of this has been, we've done a phenomenal job with people managing huge networks in a lot of uncertainty by what we kind of amassed in knowledge about our customers and drivers and making the best decision that we individually can make.
But it's kind of one of those incremental things is, oh, Bob's driving empty. Well, maybe we move Bob here. So am I right to say some of this is happening on a whiteboard or scraps of paper and then?
Very much so. In fact, it is quite literally so in some cases. We've had customers that actually have driver schedules and load plans on whiteboards that they're executing.
Because they're always changing and they're always, it's evolving, and that's how they've gotten as efficient as they are.
Yep.
And being that efficient maybe worked in a good market. In a market like ours, even really good companies are challenged to make money.
Absolutely. Yeah, a bad decision has a ripple effect in a network that is long-standing, far beyond just the one event. So, transportation is transportation. It's a messy business. We're going to make mistakes. Yep. What we're trying to do is minimize those mistakes and provide a system that self-heals. And then re-optimizes, in the unfortunate situation where you have a delay for a driver or the driver breaks down or something happens, the planner needs to focus on that problem because that is a human problem, and computers are very, very bad at stuff like that,
Yep.
right? They can't, fix a driver from calling in sick. We have to deal with it. But what the system can do is allow the human to focus on that problem, and the system then self-heals from that. So once they unassign loads from a driver that might be broken down or might be delayed at a customer, the system just says, okay, that doesn't answer your questions. It says, okay, well, these loads that were planned on the driver are now have this plan for them.
Yeah. So the $1 million question for a challenge like this is they don't wake up in the morning, an owner of a trucking company, planners at a trucking company don't wake up and go, God, I'm missing OD today. They have some things going wrong. There's symptoms in their business that say, okay, that Zach guy keeps calling me. His team keeps calling me. I met them at the conference. I'm going to call him back. Why are they calling you back? What are they seeing in their business that makes them go, yeah, maybe there's a better way?
Yeah, I mean, even in this market, they're looking at this historic problem of kind of growing linearly from headcount to how they manage their customer base. And they have great employees, but those employees are kind of showing up and fighting a kitchen fire while trying to cook breakfast every day, right? So
it's a good analogy.
yeah. So and this is every day in a carrier's operations, and it's not a bad thing. It's not saying one carrier is worse than the other. It is what it is. This is an industry thing, and what those owners of these companies want to do is deploy their very valuable resources, the people that know their customers and they know their drivers, into more revenue generating or more driver focused activity outside of just coming in and planning 100 loads today because that's what I did yesterday and that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. So we enable those people to be retasked into much more valuable areas of the business, meaning that a planner can maybe flex up into more of a customer service role and interact more with customers because they know their network, they know the operation, and we want those people interacting with the customers. And the ones that are more driver focused can focus more on driver satisfaction and safety as opposed to just brute force making sure that these driver dispatches are
right.
synced up.
So what they're seeing, the symptoms, so to speak, is the kitchen fire while we're trying to make breakfast, and they're not making the profit they want.
Right.
Margins are tighter than ever, but maybe they're even saying, hey, look, I don't know how we continue doing this if we don't do something different. And I wrote down one of my notes here when I talked to you guys the other day, which was to survive in this challenging market, you have to make some changes.
We are in an industry of pennies, and where pennies mean a lot. And if we can drive just an incremental amount of efficiency for a carrier in their transactional environment, that is significant profitability.
Yep. And the analogy I used to use, I ran a logistics company. We had moved operations from one state to another, and I had a whole new team. And I used to always say, we're going to drown until we build ourselves a boat. And then the next question is, how do you build a boat while you're drowning?
Yes.
Well, if you don't build it, you're going to die. So you build it. Yeah. You grab a piece of wood, you grab whatever you can find, and you build a boat. And it's painful to make any of these changes. But I think what you guys are talking about is a software that's not out there. For most companies, they aren't using it. So the TMS was a miracle when we got it. GPS was a miracle when we got it. I mean, all of the technologies that we now just take for granted was the next, well, maybe it's a stair step. Yeah. This is the next stair step.
It is. What's really interesting, though, is the efficiency and power of the solution and quote unquote AI, right? There's a lot of people selling quote unquote AI, right? AI is simply a tool within a toolbox, right? There are many tools within this toolbox defined as AI. It's how you deploy those tools and what are you doing for your customers. So we try not to kind of stand up and wave our hands and say AI, because you have to be very specific with what you're deploying on the customer, especially in a very skeptical, especially in a very skeptical environment where the customer's like, okay, you're telling me that this system can actually plan these loads, knowing that I have to take into consideration my driver's domicile, their hours of service, my customers, my customer facilities, whether this is a live or a drop load, all of those things now you're telling me that AI can take that into consideration. When in reality, once we explain to them what we're doing and what we're deploying on their network, a lot of it is pattern recognition, machine and reinforcement learning, and we're able to then ingest all of these things that they've had in their systems for decades and actually distill it down into a singular decision for a planner.
So is your AI kind of the customer facing, or is it inside of your solution?
It is both. So it is a very proprietary mathematical model that we publish. So it is out there. You can actually go out and review.
Oh, I
our
look
math.
forward to doing that.
Yep, it's a great read by Dr. Powell, our co-founder. But it is our ability, and this kind of leads into the next point, our ability to explain that to a customer and saying, well, this is what we're doing with this, and this is what this solution, and this is what this specific piece of this solution is doing. So there's a very big difference between leveraging a model for machine and reinforcement learning and a large language model to turn data into natural language.
Right.
There are two very different things, and I think a lot of this gets kind of wrongly distilled down into one big AI component that is just it kind of distills down the power of what it actually is.
And I spoke yesterday to Jonah McIntyre, the head of product over at Trimble, and he said, as an incumbent, as a company, a big company with thousands of employees, Trimble has thousands of employees just on the transportation side, another 9,000, I think, on the other side of their business. And he said, we haven't, installed companies that are, Fortune 500, the global companies that everyone knows. They don't want to hear a whole bunch of hype and
right.
And
now it's time to put. You kind of have to put your money where your mouth is now.
And I think, you have to be measured. You have to do it right. And I think, there's a lot of, you mentioned a lot of startups that say, oh, we're AI, and they change their name from .com to .ai.
Yes.
And,
yes.
and
it's very funny. And and not to discount its power, it is wildly powerful.
Oh yeah.
But what this has created is a massive change management problem for an organization. So we have this very sophisticated, very powerful solution that we can deploy, but it still needs people to interact with it. And their jobs and what they're doing and how they're interacting with these complex models is different from what they were doing before we implemented this. So we actually have learned through the School of Hard Knocks on helping our customers from a change management perspective. How is their organization going to look after we deploy this, and what are the workflows? How do the workflows change so that you can leverage complex, artificial intelligence and actually make it sing on your network or within your company, whether it's transportation or anywhere else?
There's always that technology human handoff, or AI human handoff, and in this case, you're replacing. I shouldn't say you're not really replacing the people, but there's somebody who's a load planner or multiple load planners. Maybe it's a team that gets together and figures out, all right, we got 2 new trucks and 1 new customer, and we got to rejigger this, and two people quit. We hired 2 new guys. We got to figure all that out. And I know we use the term tribal knowledge for that kind of stuff. Now, when they start working with you, well, first off, how long does it take for you guys to start giving them, here's what we think you should do?
Yeah, the implementation process typically lasts a few weeks just to get the pipes connected and data flowing. But the change management and adoption could be several months, depending on the complexity of the carrier, the scope of what we're doing.
But are they taking the output that you give them and say, Zach and his team said, this is what you get, just do it? Or do they say, whoa, I don't believe this? And I do know this has happened with a lot of this technology that is out there. It's not intuitive, so it's scary. You say, oh, okay, start using your left hand for that. You're like, I'm right-handed. No, trust me, left hand. and I think that is the kind of, that's what scares, that when it moves from the tech to the human who's responsible for it still, and says, yeah, I'm still responsible for these loads, regardless of what insights I got from OD. How do you make sure, you call it change management, but it's scarier?
Yeah. No, it's it's
how do you
very,
make sure that works?
It's very emotional. And there's a couple of things. There's kind of 2 schools of thought when you're deploying this, and we kind of work with the owners or the stakeholders within the company. Sometimes it's a big bang where they say, okay, well, this is what we're doing. and this is the company's direction. This is what we've made the decision to do this, and it's kind of the the burn the ships at the shore type approach. And that's an approach. It causes some turbulence, as you can imagine. There's also the crawl, walk, run approach, which is a much less traumatic approach to the organization. But the reality is every carrier's operation or every fleet operation on the floor has very, very similar personalities. They all want to make the right decision. There's not one person that works at a carrier. Now, there might be some edge cases. There's not one person that works at a carrier that says, I want to show up today and make a bad decision for the company. So they're very emotional.
But they don't have the tools
Correct.
necessarily.
But the delivery of what seemingly could be a solution is saying, hey, well, this thing's doing what I'm doing, so this is scary to me.
Right.
When in reality, the vast majority of our customers have retasked their outperformers into areas that mean more to the company, that drive more value to their organizations. So it's our job to help our stakeholders communicate that to the floor, because it's not just about, hey, this is this new tool, this is what we're doing, now you got to use it.
Right.
You really have to explain that.
I remember when I used to sell logistics services, my goal was I want to work, if it's a company that has a relatively small company, I want to work with the founder or the owner, the president, the CEO. I want their buy-in, obviously, and I want the transportation team. And I always would say, I want to sell every last one of them. But if you don't sell the guy at the dock, and then
it's a very important person.
And I always remember, a friend of mine, he owned a company, and I remember he said, oh, I love what you're saying, Joe. We have a big problem with this. We're doing this, and then he talked to a few people, and then he said, come with me. We walked right back to the dock, and he said, hey, these are the guys who are going to solve your problem. And I thought that leadership meant everything, because then the CEO said, this is going to free you up to do this, this, and this that we've been talking about for a long time. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that guy at the dock could have just said, no, this is bullshit. I don't want to do this.
Yep.
And this is bad software. And if he tells the CEO it's bad software, if he tells it doesn't work, the CEO believes him. He likes him. He hired him. Mm-hmm. And I always think that's why you got to sell the guy who makes the decision, but you got to sell everyone around it, everyone who's going to touch it.
Well, and you're constantly selling, because it's, and we've learned, in what, we believe is a differentiator to OD, is when we send a team of our team members on site with a customer, they are team members that have sat in a seat before. They've actually ran planning networks. They've actually dispatched. So when they sit and have a challenging conversation with a planner or driver manager, they're really talking from a peer perspective. They're not, a couple of kids from Silicon Valley trying to sell a dispatching solution to an operator that's sat in the seat for 20 years. They're really having a meaningful conversation around why this may be a different decision that you've made before, but are you thinking about these things that the engine is thinking about when it's making this decision?
Right. Yeah, it's a sales pitch to some extent, but it's also, hey, what's your concerns, right? It's trying to understand.
There's such a human component to this.
Well, I think this is going to become an important part of our world here going forward as AI starts to do certain things. We say, hey, Zach, let me explain why you're not going to talk to the doctor. You're going to talk to this AI system that's going to diagnose you. Like, whoa, where'd Dr. Smith go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's constantly ebbing and flowing views on how aggressive AI is going to impact our lives. We're kind of at the forefront of this right now, and we know that this is a heavy blend between applying advanced mathematics on our customers' networks and the human element to enable it. So.
Right, and being that you guys have been around for a minute, and you also understand the role of the current planners, mm-hmm. So you're not saying, and again, they're probably going to be still making the ultimate decision. Maybe in the beginning they're going to say, okay, I approve all this, and maybe at some point they go, it's just right. This is better than anyone could do manually.
Yeah, and I use this analogy all the time, and the customers that I work with and the team members that I have at OD are going to roll their eyes when they hear this, because I use it all the time. But it's very, very real in what we deal with. This is very much like the autopilot in an airplane. Airplanes have been able to land themselves for 4 decades, fully automated. No one touches a thing. The airplane taxis off the runway. No one touched a thing. There are still 2 pilots sitting in the front seat, at least.
I need them up there, man.
Well, but they're there obviously for the situations that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Now that's a dramatic scenario, but it is the reality of what our planners are doing. They're there to say, okay, I know something about this customer that the system doesn't. I'm going to override this decision. I know it might be the optimal decision, but I know this customer's upset, and I know this driver knows this customer facility. So I'm going to make this decision.
That's where the humans belong.
Exactly. We are great at the very, very challenging, kind of hairy situations, and and computers are very, very bad at that. They're very, very good at math. They're very good at when they know all of the the information that's presented to them. But when a customer calls in that's upset, and this is a big customer of yours, and you think they're about to fire you, a system doesn't really interpret that very well.
Yeah, the bot's not gonna make you feel better.
No,
I understand you're upset.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So to better illustrate this, I know you have a case study. So let's talk about that case study and talk first about why they called you back. What was the thing that they were, when they called and said, "Okay, Zach, come on over." What was the reason that they gave for? What was the last straw that made them get you guys involved?
Yeah, I think there is a whole host of reasons. We have quite a few case studies on our website, but one in particular is with Leonard's Express, which is they're a Trimble customer as well. So it was great reconnecting with them here at the conference. But they knew, and they're a fairly large carrier, and they knew that scaling their business and operating in this complexity with very manual, disparate decisions is not scalable. It doesn't lead them now, to the next 10 years of what they look like. And they have a fantastic team over there. And our stakeholder made one interesting comment that all we have is time. We have the driver's time. We have time, the time that the truck can operate. And all we can do is try to maximize that time. And taking that very simple comment and looking at it through the lens of their network, we were able to show through our proof of value process. So every one of our customers goes through a proof of value process where we actually, and this is us actually interviewing them as well as them interviewing us, because we need to make sure we're a fit and this thing is not going to break. So when we go through the proof of value process, we actually take their data and run the model against their data. It's not a full deployment. We kind of get close enough for government work. And it allows them to see the decisions that the engine would make. And we distill down and iterate through, hard constraints on the network, right? The engine doesn't know their primary customers yet. It's just kind of giving them high-level decisions. But there was extreme confidence on their side that, hey, look, there are a ton of decisions that our people are making in the moment. And these are decisions to say, okay, well, this truck's sitting and I'm going to go to a brokerage board and book a load for that truck, when there was a customer load in the system that they just didn't see. And those when we started to identify those, they were like, hey, look, nothing is perfect, and this is not going to solve all of our problems. But this does address, hey, all we have is time, and we need to maximize that time. So if I'm putting a load on a driver, I want to make sure that I'm doing my best to put the best, most profitable load on this driver that solves everything for the driver and the company. So we deployed with Leonard's. We actually increased revenue per total mile by 5%. And there was an interesting phenomenon that happened for them. And this is the revenue was great, but obviously we want to drive profitability. One of the big stats that we saw with them was they actually reduced their reliance on broker-booked loads on the asset by 40%. So that activity of saying, hey, I'm going to, I have these customer loads and I'm going to leverage these load boards to kind of fill the gaps. When in reality, we have customer freight that actually can go on the truck. So just shifting that one activity, drove a lot of efficiency within the organization.
Yeah, and hopefully you have happier customers that are going to be more likely to work with you in the future, but maybe also grow with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been a fantastic customer of ours. We're very appreciative of them, and it is a true collaboration. It is not just deploying software.
Do you start like terminal by terminal, or is this kind of a...
Yeah, it varies by customer. So typically a customer that is zone planned, meaning that there are individuals responsible for certain geographies in the United States. The reason we created zones in the transportation world is from human limitation, right? A person or maybe two people can manage maybe half the country in the load, in loads and customers or drivers. And even in the driver's stance, the driver manager can probably manage, 30 to 40 drivers at a time.
Right.
A system, a mathematical system, a very powerful computer can manage hundreds of thousands. So
Right.
we definitely start to see a centralization of decision making. So we're not disparate anymore,
okay.
right? We're not making decisions on an island, and my fiefdom is this area, and I could have everything else can be a smoldering mess around me, but as long as my zone is fine, I'm
Right.
good.
So we all want to do better for our drivers. We want them home as much as they can be home.
Yep.
And I want them not working. I want them driving every hour they can that they're eligible for, not 6 hours like a lot of drivers are getting today. So that, I'm assuming that's one of your inputs. Obviously, we want profitable business. There's the location of the truck. What are kind of all the inputs
Yeah.
that you have, and what are you solving for? I mean, besides profitability.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a moment to geek out. That's actually called objective function. Objective function is different for every customer. Profitability is part of objective function, but also getting a driver home on time when we say they're going to get them home on time, making sure that we are maximizing their utility and loaded miles, so their paycheck is the most we can get for them. Making sure that we're servicing our customers. So we have customers that are high priority, that are never fail customers. We have customers that are kind of like, they're customers of ours, they're great, but this customer cannot fail because we did something with another customer.
Right.
So all of those components are what we call objective function. So it's very difficult to walk into a carrier or a shipper and start to talk about objective function, but in the reality it is taking into consideration profitability along with all of these other things that we need to take into consideration when we make this decision. That's why this has been so hard for decades, because you can have a system that boosts profitability, but the planners are saying, hey, well, you're turning my network upside down. Yes, this is more profitable,
Right.
but we just failed our largest customer. So now we have systems, and very powerful systems, that can be tuned to behave very similarly to the heartbeat of our organization.
I was at a little 3PL, and I left and I joined a carrier that I liked. I liked them very much, great guys. And I always remember the difference. I came from a non-asset 3PL, and I went to this.
It's a different vibe for sure.
And I remember they said, we want you to win this kind of customer. And I was like, okay. So it was big customers. And I remember a big box store that I got us in at. And I remember, the sales guys and I we're high-fiving. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so good. And then, but we had to drop a few trailers off to be filled. And we did. And then I called them up. I said, hey, did you get those trailers filled? They were like, there's no trailers here. I said, wait a sec. And then I went down and I saw the operations guy, and he said, oh, they didn't fill them fast enough. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I left them there, but they didn't fill them. And I gave them a few days. They didn't fill them, so we went and picked them up. And he goes, that's the way it works. So I was like, well, this is a brand new customer, and this is a lot of money. And I remember I went and saw the CEO, and I said, hey, how does this work? And he goes, I don't ever overrule those guys.
Yeah.
And I remember I was thinking, I thought, okay, I'm going to end up leaving here. There's no way I can stay. And I can't complain, because I understand how difficult trucking is. There's not a lot of money, but basically they optimize their way out of a Fortune 500 customer because they didn't load the trucks fast enough when we first started. And I remember thinking, well, you know what you solved for.
Yeah. It's not.
It wasn't new customers.
Yeah, for sure. It's not for the faint of heart. And again, this is a very emotional, messy business.
It was.
Yeah. So yes. So systems don't solve that problem. They can help it, but the emotion within decisions in a trucking network or a fleet network is, they're going to remain.
But getting back to it, you can say we can prioritize. Obviously, profit is going to be somewhat. Asset utilization,
home time for drivers, customer service. So
certain customers are probably, as you said, primary, and some are going to be secondary.
And all of that is tuned into the solution, and we really incentivize the model to behave in accordance with how the company speaks. So if they're saying, hey, this is our largest never fail customer, this is the backbone of our network, we need to make sure that the engine is making decisions to protect the service of that customer.
Right.
So we can still be profitable, we can still get our drivers home, but this customer absolutely needs to be serviced. So sometimes that impacts the optimized network, right? We're not pitching utopia. We're not saying, hey, we're going to solve all your problems and everything's going to be fully utilized, right? We're trying to incrementally move the needle and be as optimized as we can, understanding that customers are customers and they ask us to do things that are suboptimal.
Right. Now, do you ever come up with some things that they are surprised by, where you say, hey, this is one of the people you said you really like, but you're not really making that much money over there, or maybe even losing money?
A lot. So we actually will show a tremendous amount of customers where we think we're doing well because they're giving us all this freight, but not all freight's created equal and not all revenue is good revenue. So one of the interesting anecdotes that we will kind of call out generally is that the engine, or an optimization engine, let's use deadhead miles for example. So the engine has no concept of deadhead. It's saying, we as humans have said, okay, well, I don't want to run this truck empty, and I'm going to put this arbitrary boundary at 200 miles. I never want to send this driver more than 200 miles empty. Well, the optimization engine is like, well, you have a very profitable load over here at 400 miles away. It's wildly profitable. I'm going to go pick up this load over here. So what's interesting is sometimes our customers will see an increase in empty miles, but a significant increase in profitability. Because if they're trying to just boost loaded miles and they put low revenue freight just to drive loaded miles, they're kind of just practicing. They're running a very, very thin margin business and making decisions just to move the truck.
Right. And it's an interesting thing. So you could be a planner, I could be a planner, and Zach could say, we have a whole bunch of customers who value sustainability, and we're tracking empty miles for them, and that's my priority. And then maybe I'm over here on the other side saying, it's all about profitability. And then maybe a third planner says, we got to get these drivers home. The boss said that we're losing drivers because we can't get them home at night. And then maybe a third says we need to get the drivers' utilization. There's a million things you can solve for. That's why it is a math problem.
Yeah, part of it is really working and partnering with the customer in the scenarios that you mentioned. If it's a hey, we can't get these drivers home on time, and we're not boosting loaded miles, or we don't have the loaded miles that we want. There's really two problems there. It's one of two problems, or it's both. You either have the wrong freight in the network that doesn't fit your network well, or your drivers are domiciled in the wrong place, if you have drivers that are domiciled out of their homes. So we can help our customers actually identify, given your current network or your future network, maybe you're anticipating winning more freight from a certain customer. We can actually help them understand where drivers should be domiciled, so they can adjust their sign-on bonus strategy to help place drivers where they actually need drivers to be domiciled.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and I live in Michigan, and there's a lot of drivers who want to live in northern Michigan, which is beautiful. I don't blame them, but challenge is it's not on the way to anywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe the Upper Peninsula and Green Bay, I guess, but and I've run into that. I remember trying to get flatbeds, and a lot of times these flatbeds would go somewhere north, and you're like, how do I get these things back here? We need them.
It's the reality. There are companies that have drivers domiciled. They're good drivers in the network, and they're
200 miles away.
Exactly.
200 miles from where they should be.
Yep. So sometimes you're starting with a hand tied behind your back, but the engine will do everything it can to boost the mileage. But there's also, it's not just about us hammer nail trying to optimize a planning decision. We actually work with the customers on the strategy behind, okay, if your drivers are domiciled in an area, and we believe that is the cause of this situation of them not having the loaded miles that they want, or the utility numbers that we're looking for, let us help you run a study on where these drivers should be domiciled,
right?
And maybe add a couple of drivers in this other market that help alleviate.
Well, and you might say, hey, we want to continue with the drivers that we like, and if they're a little out of position, fine. But over time, we need more here, and here.
Yeah, and that's the reality of when you start to move into a centralized system-based decision, it does shake the tree a little bit, because you have maybe a very historical vocal driver that gets the best loads from a driver manager because they're always on the phone talking to that driver manager and trying to make and advocating for themselves, which they should, but maybe they're very sensitized into this one lane that they love to run. Well, the engine is saying, okay, I get that you like to run that lane, but that's not the best decision for you or the company. You just like that lane because because you like.
It's a funny thing, like when during COVID, when a lot of people worked from home, and then when they said no, now you have to go to the office, they're like, yeah, but I don't want to go to the office. And depending on the company, I've heard a lot of bosses say, we're not running this company for the benefit of you. I mean, we want you to be happy, but this is a job that we think you have to be here for.
Yep.
And you go, well, wait, I got to drive 1 hour, and I got to be in traffic. I got to use gas. And yeah, I mean, that's why it's a job.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a delicate balance. I mean, it's not our mission to come in and force people to do things and flip a network upside down. But the reality is,
you guys are making a suggestion. That's all.
We are. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're going to run their company ultimately how they want to run it. But at least you're saying this is optimal, or optimal dynamics in this case. So I'm going to summarize what we talked about. Then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Zach Schuchart, and we're talking about Fleet Profitability Unleashed, the optimal dynamics partnership advantage. So first we talked about Trimble. Trimble is a fantastic conference. I went last year. It was in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I was there.
Yep, it was great. And this year in New Orleans, wonderful. I love this location. New Orleans isn't all bad. I ate on Bourbon Street last night. Yeah. And next year it's in San Diego.
I just heard that. I'm super excited for that.
Yeah. San Diego's a great place for a conference too.
Yes, it is.
So definitely want to get to the Trimble conference. And maybe more important than the conference is you want to be a Trimble partner and a customer. Yesterday, they had a stat. First off, it's a global company. It is one of the top, 6, 7 tech companies. Nobody hears. I Googled it the other day. One of the top technology or logistics technology. They had Oracle on there. They had SAP, and I was like, okay, they have modules, I guess. Trimble's on that list.
Yeah.
And they're on that short list. And they kind of fly under the radar unless you get to one of their conferences and you start to realize.
It's a huge company.
I think over 1 million trucks have it. I think last year $60 billion of freight flowed through the system. So this is a major, major company. And I will say it is the advancements that we're seeing this week at this conference are unbelievable. So that's the first thing. Second, we're talking about what you guys do. And it's a new type of software that is another layer, and it's a layer that's going to help you be more profitable. That's the bottom line, more profitable.
Yes.
We talked about a whole bunch of different problems you can solve for, but let's face it, the biggest problem in our space is profitability. I want my drivers to be happy. I need my customers obviously to be happy. So I have to do other things, but I have to make money or I can't do any of those other things. And so we talked about, what'd you say, 75 trucks at least?
That's just plus or minus there, but that's kind of the minimum. Yep. But some of our larger customers are well over 1,000 trucks.
Yep. And and we also talked about this is a very difficult market, and it's not as if we're all looking and saying, oh, thank God for the first quarter of 2026.
Yeah.
There is no guarantee that 2026 is going to be a great year.
Yeah. We just with the USPS numbers that just came out on parcel shipments being down, you're kind of like, we're kind of bouncing along the bottom. I think we.
Yeah, and I know we need some armies to leave the field trucks to get off the market, but I think I've heard people say that the secondary market for trucks is different now. And
yeah, I look at it from a perspective. Yes, there's always a focus on capacity when you're in the space of servicing our customers that are the capacity, but I'm also very passionate about the relationship between a shipper and a carrier. And it's very interesting when you actually analyze the market and where rates have been, and then also look at the actual people that have taken over from the last generation of transportation directors at shippers. They're very procurement minded, so they're just hammering on rates. And not that it hasn't been before, but in my view, there's a lot of work that we need to do to enhance the relationship between a shipper and a carrier we've moved so far away from the relationship because it's become very transactional.
Right.
That that relationship and that service play between a carrier and shipper is kind of getting diluted. I think some of the addressing our specific market, our transportation market, a little bit of that resides on the shipper as well. So yeah, it's a capacity problem, but there's also a demand problem as well.
Zach, it's we didn't touch on this, but maybe we'll touch on it now.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity. So if you and I right now were put in at a very large shipper and they said, Joe, Zach, figure out who we should be working with, we would probably go in a conference room and say, what do we want from our transportation partners? And I think, put my procurement hat on, I'd say I want it to be inexpensive. I want it to be the lowest price. But I would argue that we should be prioritizing for cybersecurity and compliance and
safety.
And that's when I say yes, safety of the stuff we're hauling. Obviously, we've had huge cargo theft problems, and cybersecurity is kind of its first cousin, and so is freight fraud. I think it would make a lot of sense for a lot of shippers. I suspect it's already happening where security is becoming maybe more important than the lowest price.
It is. The cargo theft is on the rise, but when you look at direct shipper to carrier relationships, a lot of the cargo theft and the kind of fraudulent DOT numbers and MC numbers, are driven, are enabled by the non-asset space. So when you work directly with carriers, our customers, the risk of theft is much lower.
Right. Yeah. I was at a few conferences lately, and everyone was talking about the tequila theft. The Sammy Hagar and Guy Fieri had $1 million worth of tequila stolen, 2 truckloads. And the drivers who stole it, they picked it up. They did the right thing. They dropped it off where they were told. They said, job well done. That's when he said, you stole $1 million worth of tequila. Maybe accidentally, maybe got spoofed. But anyway, getting back to it, I think I would love to see the market start to value stuff other than the low price, because
it needs to, for sure.
I just before COVID, I helped a very large shipper select a 3PL. And I remember when they hired a new VP of logistics while I was on that, and I was working with procurement team. The procurement team said, top priorities, savings, second priority, savings, third priority, savings. So I had a slide that said that. And then when the new VP showed up and he said, you have a deck that you want to show me? So I showed him. He goes, we have horrible logistics, and your top priority is to save. I go, and I point, of course, to the procurement guys. He goes, I want us to be the very best. I want us to be world-class logistics. I want us to win customers because of our logistics. And he goes, we have a budget. We have to save money at some point, but I want to be world-class first.
Yep.
And I love that. I love the idea of let's be effective first and efficient second.
Absolutely.
The efficiency thing, the race to the bottom, so to speak, has driven good carriers not good carriers. It has driven some carriers to cut corners.
Sure.
And we've seen it. We've seen it with safety and theft and all sorts of issues.
Yeah, and I think back to kind of the changing of the guard from the old school transportation director to kind of the more procurement mindset. You also had a third kind of leg of this that's really dumping fuel on the fire, which is the vast proliferation of the non-asset community brokers. So basically, you have a shipper now that's saying, okay, I don't want to manage a ton of carriers. I would rather manage things through a broker, which is fine. But what happens now is that transportation manager hammers on the 3PL or the broker to push rates down, which compresses margin on the people that are actually hauling the freight. So you have this kind of vicious cycle that happens.
Yeah, and in this market, the broker's not making any money. Their margins drop from 14, 16 and higher to 12, and a lot of them are suffering. And that, by the way, I think the percentage of brokered freight is growing. I think the very best brokers are exceptional, and a lot of top carriers are saying, we'll open a brokerage. So I'm not against, I know you're not against them either,
100%.
but the bad ones really hurt the business.
It feels kind of like the pendulum swung a little bit too far over the overutilization of just in general a non-asset.
Yeah.
Non-asset.
So I think also if you look during COVID, we peaked at 30,000 freight brokers, 31,000. I think we're down to 25,000, but the top 1,000 are gaining much faster market share.
Yeah, and
so
they're
I think
actually
that's
providing a service. Yeah,
that's probably a good thing because they can make the investments.
Sure.
And build. When I say investments, it's just not in technology and customer experience. It's going to be with the right relationships with carriers. I think if you and I were in charge of a carrier, we'd say we're going to have selected relationships with brokerages.
Yeah, absolutely. We want customer freight.
I want them to be really good to us and vice versa.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's put a big old bow on this one.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on the topic, Zach?
I Optimal Dynamics is driving significant change for our customers, and we look forward to working with our current customers and future customers to drive even more value in their networks.
Yep. I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any other links you and your marketing team give me, I'll put in the show notes, and people can reach out and talk to you.
Yeah. So it's our website is optimaldynamics.com. So you can go and look at all of our case studies and all of our customer testimonials there.
If you give them to me, if Erica gives them to me, I'll put them in the show notes.
Erica does great work. So.
Yep. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.